today with us. Richard, welcome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, buddy. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. So Richard is president, co-founder of a small company called DigitalMarketer. You may have heard of DigitalMarketer. Make a really big difference out there in the world. And
Thank you.
Richard is all about family. It was amazing the first time we had the opportunity to talk. So I'm actually on my Facebook page right now, starting a watch party. I would invite you guys to do the same. I think Richard's figuring that out. The technology is amazing. We can be watching. We can be watching a live, starting a live on our page. So I'm doing the same thing right now on my page. So if you're watching this live, you see a button that says start watch party or host a watch party, I think. And you can literally go live with us on your page and help us reach more families. And because Richard has something today he's going to share that's going to make a difference for families. And so I'm doing that now. Okay. I think we got it figured out, Richard. So welcome, Lisa, Kane, all of you who are watching us live here. So the reason we put together the connection series is we want to help families be more connected and create more connection. And that's always been important to us, especially at a time like now. And so, Richard, I'm going to give you kind of more of an official introduction here in a minute and more background. But I just want to get right into something because this is connection series.
Okay.
So something I've asked all of my guests at the very beginning. If there's one piece of advice that you could give families right now to help them be more connected, whether that's something your family's doing, like what would you share?
I'll share something. And my wife came up with this, like most things in my house, because she's definitely the smart one. And it's been really cool and something we've shared with our friends, and they've also gotten a lot of benefit out of it. So we have 2 kids, and so 4 people in the house, and basically each person gets assigned a night. And that night is theirs. So they have to figure out what we're going to eat, what we're going to do, set it up. And depending on the complexity, they can get help from parents or other parents. And it has been so amazing. We had, like, I'm kind of fancy, so I did fancier night. We did we did Broadway HD, and we watched a Broadway show, and I set the living room up like a theater, and we had a fancy meal and everyone dressed up, and I printed out official invitations and menus. And my wife did a spa night. My other daughter did a scavenger hunt. And it has been so amazing to watch them and give them the responsibility, but to see what they come up with. It's been incredibly creative, and it's brought us all together. I'll tell you, laughter, just a ton of laughter on those nights, and just fun and kind of, I don't know, joy. It's something that I plan on making sure that we take with us once we're out of all the COVID quarantine and shelter in place, because it's been just amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's some of those things that that the shelter in place and the quarantine has actually provided some opportunities for us to kind of like take a hard look at things. And it I think something like this exposes the things that we're doing well as a family. It also exposes areas or opportunities for us to be more connected. And so, okay. So if you guys are watching this, I'm live here, Richard Lindner. You guys have to start a watch party, because that first nugget he just gave, that we'll give credit to Richard's wife, but and Richard.
Right.
But letting each of your children or each family member choose and like have control over the night and choose the activity and choose the meal and choose what you're going to do.
That's how you can go
has
bad.
you be more connected.
Like one a week, no more than 2 a week. Otherwise, you've just given yourself a second job. So we figured that out the hard way. Just pause for a little pro tip. No more than 2 a week, and space them out.
That's awesome. I love it. And so, the reason we've created the connection series, and for those of you who are watching, who are new to Family Brand, we believe that every family, your family, that you can define what it is your family stands for, and you can declare what it is your family is going to be known for by creating your family's brand. Like, no different than we do in organizations and as entrepreneurs, but yet don't often do it as families. And that in doing that, not only will you create an intentional culture in your home that'll bless your family now, but really create a foundation that could bless generations, like hundreds or thousands of your family members to come, which is kind of really cool to think about. And so within that, like, I asked Richard, like, hey, Richard, you've had a lot of success in your family. You've had a lot of success as an entrepreneur. Like, what's the one thing that you would love to share? And he said, he texted me right back and said, a better starting place without all the pain. So Richard, I'd love to like dive into that. Like what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So I guess I was 12 or 13 years old, and my dad told me something that I don't guess, I know I will never forget, just as long as I live. And he said, uh, son, it's my job as your father to give you a better starting point in life than I had so that you can go further than I did. And I was like, oh, okay. That was deep. And I'm talking to at 12 or 13 years old as a boy, I mean, you're kind of right around that time where you're like, I'm a man, in that squeaky, raspy, like, oh no, my voice is changing kind of way. So I didn't really understand it then. I understood it was like a big deal, right? I understood that was a big concept. And for my dad to say like, so, for you to honor my sacrifice and my journey, you have to take this further than I did. And, again, kind of becoming a man, I had that very worldly and materialistic view of what he meant. Right.
Yep.
So thinking like, I need to go to a better school. I need to make more money than my dad. I need to have a nicer house. I need to drive a nicer car. We need to go on better vacations, and just stupid materialistic things like that. But that's kind of that kind of started a journey of like, what does it mean to give your children a better starting point? Because as I've gone through life, and look, I'm blessed, like, just period. I get to live a life today that I could have only dreamed of as a kid. And that's cool. Like, that's really, really cool. A lot of the times I'll if I'm kind of in a weird funk, I'll try to put myself in, 14, 15-year-old me, and like, what would he say about the thing that I'm complaining about right now? But it's cool to think about it that way. But it's also cool when you stop and think that I'm living a life I could only dream about, but my children just call that normal. So that's really cool, but it's also really scary, because I know how I got here, and I know the bumps and the bruises that road required, and how that molded it. I mean, for one, my realization of what that statement that my dad told me when I was 12 or 13 years old actually meant. Yeah. Now, how I make sure that my children understand that, understand my pain, understand that pain, understand the story in a way that will make the lesson stick without having them to experience the pain. Because, man, the powerful realization that I had is my struggles and what I had to do to kind of overcome them, and what we're still doing to overcome them. Those are a gift. Those are absolutely a gift. And I don't want to rob my children of that, but I want to give them that better starting place.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Yeah. And I think that, like, I love the first time we talked, when we were talking about this very concept of like a new starting point without all the pain. And you even told me that has something to do with the name you have for your holding company. Tell us the name of your holding company and kind of what the symbolism and the meaning is behind that. And by the way, welcome all of you guys jumping on here live here with Richard Lindner, co-founder, president of DigitalMarketer. Has, married to his wife, has 2 beautiful children. We're talking about families. So yeah, tell us about the name of your holding company and why you chose that.
Yes. So the name of my holding company is Gen 1. So kind of planting that flag. And it was funny when I said that to you, and kind of our conversation spun off that, but planting that flag, because as I think back kind of that journey, of my life, right? Not trying to be too woo-woo or big here, but going back and looking and kind of taking almost inventory of the pain to say, like, what pain did I go through, and what did it teach me, and how can I give those lessons to my children? What I realized was my pain was not the same pain that my parents had, which means they did it. Like, good job, well done, good and faithful. Like, I didn't experience the same pain they did, and my pain was different, and it wasn't better or worse, but they did a great job of telling me and explaining to me the pain that they had, so that I didn't have to recreate it. Now I have to do that. And if you think every generation is almost the first generation of new pain, right? Of new lessons. For me, going back and saying, like, man, there are only a few things that I really needed to know, and that now my children need to know. And I can break those down into categories. But if I had 4 things that I need my children to know, to alleviate all the pain that I had, and to not like to be able to overcome things easier. It would be, you know, you need to believe in something. Like, number one, you need to believe in something bigger than yourself. Right? For us, it's Jesus. We're spiritual. For you, whatever. But there has to be this. There has to be something bigger than you in your life. Number two, they have to believe in themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Mindset matters. And these are things that my parents didn't have the luxury of thinking about mindset when they were giving me their lessons. So I have to say, what do I know that they didn't know, and how can I pass that on, again, to honor that struggle of my parents? You know, number three, I want them to think about others more than they think about themselves. Right. And if they can, you know, if they can do that, it kind of seems, I don't know, you're just not in a funk as often. You're not like, your problems don't seem that big if you can make yourself think of others more.
Right.
And then four, like, understand how to learn, understand how to find solutions to your problems. Like, I think if those four things, like, we give our children those four things, they believe in something bigger than themselves, they believe in themselves, they think of others more than they think of themselves, and they know how to learn, they know how to find solutions to their problems. At the end of the day, it's just kind of going to be okay.
Yeah. So I love that. So what we're talking about, those of you just joined, we're talking about this kind of the focus of our live here interview with Richard is a new starting point without all the pain. And then the name of his holding company is Gen 1, with this idea that, like, what if every generation looked at themselves as the first generation from the standpoint of, like, let's take all the good from the generation prior to us, add on to that our lessons, and create more possibility for the next generation. Imagine if every generation was doing that. Like, what that family stands for in the form of their mission, their vision, their values was intentionally created and intentionally passed on with the sole purpose of making each generation better, like having each generation experience more possibility and less pain. And that's totally possible if what a family stands for is intentionally created and intentionally passed on. Unfortunately, so many times in families, it's like there's a culture in a home, there's values in a home, but they're created by default instead of intentionally created by design. And this idea of, like, it was so funny when Richard said, like, man, the name of my holding company is Gen 1, and it was all about me planting my family's flag. I was like, dude, that's the tagline for family brand. Like, plant your family's flag, right? Like put a stake in the ground. And one of the cool things that I heard in those principles, Richard, is, so for those of you who you know are just watching one of these for the first time, I've shared on a few of these the family brand framework, which we've not yet put into a course and launched to the world. We're going to, but we believe that your family's brand consists of three things: culture, language, and experiences. And so we want to help families intentionally create the culture, the language, and the experiences. We're big believers, though, that when you create your family's values, that it's not just like, hey, we're the Lindner family and our values are, and then list off like 4 values. It's really powerful, in our opinion, to tie your last name to the values. So Lindners think more of others than they think of themselves. Lindners find a way. Lindners make things better. Lindner, like taking those 4 principles, right? Because your last name is the brand. It would be like a company that's celebrated for culture, like Zappos. They don't, it's Zappos does, Zappos is. It's like, and so there's just a power in your children and your family every day saying and putting on the walls your last name, right? So I think about those 4 principles. I'm like, man, this could be the Lindner family values, right? Like,
and it's funny, we were talking about values, and I told you a story where, I want to make sure that my children have something to fall back on when something feels weird. Like, we've always told our kids, if we're going to the doctor, it's funny when they're small, like, hey, we're gonna go to the doctor, and the first question is, am I gonna get a shot? And I don't know if we're weird, but we've always just told them the truth. Like,
right.
Yes, you're going to get 3, like, sorry. Or I don't know, maybe, but if you do, it'll hurt for a minute. I'll be there and you'll feel better because you need it. So I like anchoring those things when they know something happens and they're like, oh, that's exactly what you said was going to happen. It's okay. So one of the things that I've been intentional about, and not knowing this framework and not even realizing, just wanting to anchor something back for my children. Anytime that they I say complain, but they're sharing with me a struggle about something, and it's hard, especially if they're doing the right thing or they're struggling with doing the right thing. And just say, we're Lindners, we do the hard things. And so anchoring back to that, to give them, like, eventually they'll hear that enough. And eventually when something feels hard and they know they're doing the right thing, they'll go, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm a Lindner and we do the hard things.
Yeah.
right?
Lindners do hard
So
things.
yeah, that's just it. So it's crazy, but all that has to come through story, right? I'm a
Yeah.
marketer, so it makes a lot of this easier. But for me, sharing that pain and making sure that, again, they don't have to go through it, but that they have a visceral like understanding of it comes in story. And look, my children are blessed, and what I am scared to death of is that, they're going to be spoiled. They're going to be entitled. They're going to they're not going to have the pain that I had, so that they're not going to build up like the fight that I had, or know what it's like to struggle the way that I struggled. So they won't, they'll take the things they have for granted.
Yeah.
So we make sure that we have family stories. And just like I have organizational stories, like there are 5 stories at DigitalMarketer that every new employee hears when they come on, because it explains our why.
Yep.
It gives them a filter to view all the decisions that we make historically or present or future. So we go in and we tell those stories. Like one of the things that we do, or we did, it's been harder to do the past 6 weeks or so. We go to a very nice dinner, once a month or every other month, but we go to white tablecloth, probably don't have a children's menu. Have to explain when we get there that no, my kids are fine. Like they don't need a children's menu. It'll be okay. And we go there and we have an amazing meal as a family, and we talk about how thankful we are. But then either my wife or I tell them a story about a time when we were broke. And I mean, like stupid broke, about, sitting in the floor and rolling change because we couldn't afford, to take it to the machine that you dumped in because it took a couple of pennies per dollar, or, and using that to go buy an extra value meal or a McDonald's dollar menu. And then saying things intentionally like, you know what? And that built character. And when you are at our home and you have not anchored yourself in your career, you're going to have that same opportunity, and it's going to be okay. And you're going to miss these meals. And every once in a while, we'll take you out to one of them. I'm not going to take that from you. So when you can't afford to do this, it'll make when you can that much better.
Yeah.
We tell them we give them recipes that we used to make that we made up because we would open the refrigerator door and that's what we had. And the meal had to come from that. So those are the type of like really important stories for us. And we like to do it in contrast. So when we're doing something that we could have never imagined doing during those lean years, and boy, that's about the nicest way I think I've ever said that, lean years. How can I almost celebrate those years and anchor it back and say like, this is only good because of that. This isn't good because of the materialistic aspect of whatever we're doing, the trip, the dinner, the this, the that. It's good because of where we came from and the way that we did it. So again, story, like every family has defining stories of struggles that they overcame. Your kids should know that. And by the time they're out of the house, they should be so sick of telling it that they can recite it verbatim and mimic your facial expressions and your tone.
Yeah. What I love about that is, for those of you who know this already, that really a family brand is the Campfire Effect for families. So my business, the Campfire Effect, we took our family through the process and we're like, oh, we just created a family brand. And one of the things that we teach in Family Brand and Campfire Effect now is that you can plant the seeds of something, but they don't take root until there's a story attached to it. So story is what has a seed take root.
Yeah.
And so we can tell our family like, hey, Lindners do the hard things. Hey, Smiths do hard things. Smiths can talk about anything without judgment. Smiths are healthy and active. Lindners, care more about others than they care about themselves. And those are powerful seeds that have been planted. But for those seeds to be watered, nurtured, and take root, it's when we attach a story to it. And if it's a family story. And so where this kind of comes full circle, Richard, I'm so glad you brought this up, is one of the things that we teach in the first pillar of culture. We teach space, leadership, and roots. And then the roots, there's this growing body of research out there that not a lot of families are familiar with. I wasn't. That says that one of the greatest indicators of a child's future well-being. So just that alone, that's a pretty big statement. One of the greatest indicators of a child's future well-being is how much they know about their family heritage and their ancestors and where they come from.
Wow.
Because those stories give them this sense of like, oh, so my great, great, great grandmother who came over to this country and didn't know the language and sacrificed everything. And like, you mean like that's who I am? Or my great, great grandfather that like founded this town and like, that's who you are. And so we maybe have taken this to a level that maybe most people wouldn't, but have you seen the movie Coco with your kids, Richard?
I did not see that with them. They saw it, and then I've got a sensitive child, so she did not want to see it again.
Okay.
Made her sad.
Yeah. So Coco's all about this very thing of your ancestors and your friend that, you know, on the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos, they put up the ofrenda, right? And they put pictures of their, well, we have found ancestors of ours that we really feel embody each of our family mission, our family vision, and our values. And we've created a little ofrenda in our living room. And like our great grandparent is up there. Dicey Mae Smith's up there, Christopher Layton, and our kids can be like, oh yeah, Smiths do hard things. That's Caleb Clark Baldwin. Oh yeah, Smiths are creators. That's Christopher Layton. Smiths love and support one another. That's Ann Patton Peterson. But like, man, that's caused those values and the mission and the vision like really take root. And so I love what you're talking about here with family stories that can back up the values. Mm-hmm. And if we pass those stories and those intentionally created like mission, vision, values on, like, yeah, there's real opportunities for it to impact generations, like hundreds or thousands of our family members to come.
Yeah. And that's where, I mean, I loved when we got on that conversation, right? About legacy, right? About what are we leaving? And, you know, how are our children, if you think about what I started out by saying, like, I live a life that I could only like dream of when I was a kid. And, right. And there's a lot of things there. I want every generation to their new normal is better than my normal. Like totally. I think about my great grandchildren and the way that my wife and I are trying to do the best we can. Look, we fail all the time at home. I mean, all the time. But the way that we're doing our best to show up, be intentional about those 4 areas, that'll just be the way that it is. Like
that's the culture that's been created.
Yeah, my children will just parent their children this way,
totally,
and improve upon, and their children will do the same. And how much better does that get? How much tighter of a family unit is it? How much safer of a space? How much more impact can they have on others in the world? I don't know, and I'll never know. But I'm going to do my best to make sure that my kids leave with a better starting point than I did in faith, mindset, service, conflict resolution, communication, learning, health and fitness, money, all the things that my parents didn't have the luxury of giving me because that wasn't the most important there. But because of where I started with their hard work, I can think about things that they couldn't. And if every generation says that, man, our children are going to enable powerful change in this world. And totally. Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, it's not about like beating up any of our parents for the job they did or didn't do. It's like they did the best they can. I'm doing the best I can. It's like, I heard this quote one time, the saying of like, honor the past, respect the present, create the future. And so I think that's really like, let's honor the past of where we've come from and the foundation our parents laid for us. Let's respect the fact that we have the opportunity to create like now and then create the future. And yeah, my hope is that my kids are way better parents than I am. My hope is that our kids take this foundation and upgrade. And what's so interesting with that is like my wife has said this a lot. She's like, because as entrepreneurs, like I'm always investing in my leadership. I go to leadership courses and I've drug her to a few with me. And like, I'm always, I've invested a lot of money in my leadership. And I was like, man, this is amazing that we get to like develop as leaders and bring this back to our home. She's like, you do realize though, the greatest leadership development opportunity in the world is in homes. And I was like, wow. Smart one. Like, she's like, that is like, we're spending all this time and money and energy later in life to develop leaders and develop ourselves as leaders. But like, and it's one thing that you and I talked about is like, what if we had this mindset of like, what do I want my kids to leave my home with already knowing?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, what if there was a lot of things that they didn't have to like, they left my home and then they have to go do a bunch of work to overcome things because of the foundation I created but it's like, what if they could actually leave our home with leadership and mindset and like loving, what the scheme is of family brand? It's a good scheme, by the way, but if there was a scheme behind all this,
we're scheming a bit.
Yeah. We want to get inside homes and through culture and language and experiences and a family brand. The whole goal is that every individual in that family loves themselves. That
is the best thing. Anyone leaves with your home or any place else with a true love of themselves, and their starting point is so much further ahead than anybody else. I mean, you look at, I'm sure what you had to break down, things that I had to break down, and the pitfalls of personal and professional development can be self-loathing, self-hatred, right? A poor
Yeah,
self-image. What are the decisions that we made that got ourselves into trouble because we were so worried about what other people thought? What are like all of these things that just boil down to the easiest thing, like love yourself. You're good. Like God made you exactly the way you were supposed to be. There are things that you need to work on so that you can achieve what you were supposed to achieve. But fundamentally, you are right. You are good. You are the way you are supposed to be.
yeah,
Like if my children leave the house with that understanding and they're, maybe not as good money as I wish they would be, and understanding that, you know what, I'll take that trade-off every single day.
totally. So, okay,
Preferably
I want,
both. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's an and, right?
yeah.
So I want to be sensitive to your time, Richard. One question I want to ask you, like, you're a true entrepreneur. You serve entrepreneurs. You support entrepreneurs. Why do you think it is that as entrepreneurs, it's easier for us to be more intentional about the brand and the culture of our businesses than our own homes?
Man, I don't know. I mean, that is a question that hurts. I mean, when you're open and honest about it, like, and back to what you said about leadership, I can tell you that, up until a couple of years ago, and maybe even still on certain days, like I invest more in developing the people who work for me than the people who live with me. That's like, I just got a thing in my throat saying that out loud, but it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I run my business very intentionally, and we have mission, vision, values. My home's not run like that. It's run intentionally, but not with the clarity that I know those things give. And I don't have an answer to why. I mean, maybe it's, we're tapped, maybe
Yeah.
it's that in certain stages of our entrepreneurial journey, that home gets what's left of us, not the best of us.
Yeah.
And boy, I know I could wear that shirt for a very long time.
Totally.
And that's, I mean, in story for my family, boy, that's on close to the top in regrets and what I learned from it. I don't know why it is, but I love what you guys are doing, and I love the driving kind of mission of giving family clarity and purpose. It's so much easier to love yourself if you understand yourself. It's so much easier to explain to your friends against peer pressures and things as you're growing up if you say, well, I'm a Lindner and Lindners do the hard things.
Totally.
This is hard. I'm gonna lean in. I don't have to figure out what to say to you. It is reflex because I know who I am. I know where I come from. I know what I stand for. So I don't know why, but I know it's wrong.
Yeah. One of the things
that needs to be fixed.
Yeah. And I don't know why either. I ask every entrepreneur that comes on their perspective. Some things that I've heard that are really good, and some things that I've thought, and just some studies I've read, is like, one, like from a recognition standpoint, your kids probably aren't like, Mom, the way you folded my clothes and placed them in my drawer without me asking was like amazing. Or it's like, Dad, the way you just like, get me to like, you coach my sports team and you like take 2 nights out of you. So it's like from a recognition standpoint and an achievement, it's way more easily noticed in the workplace, right? And it's instant. Like you and I will do this live and I can go feel really good about it because all the likes, the comments, the shares, the loves, right? It's like, but I might tell my kids for 5 years, like, dude, don't wipe your boogers under the table, right? Like, and I might not make any progress for 5 years for like one simple thing, but I can go do a live and get instantaneous, like, and I just, man, I think that's a real thing. And it's like, and so, yeah, I mean, and look, our mission for those of you watching with Family Brand is not like, hey, we're the Smith family. We're a perfected body of work. Let us show you what we've done. Like we struggle as much as anyone. In fact, selfishly, we created Family Brand to force us to be intentional, to like stay in the conversation and just share some things that have made a difference for us. But it is our mission to like have families intentionally plant that flag. And like you declare to the world what it is you want to be known for. Like you decide what it is you're going to stand for. Like not let the world do it. Okay, there's a couple closing questions I ask all my guests that I don't give them any prep ahead of time. Just rapid fire.
Hitting.
You've already spoke to one of them probably, but when you think of the Lindner family and what you guys stand for more than anything, and it could be the Lindners do hard things, that might be somewhere else, but what's the first thing that comes to you? What do we stand for more than anything?
That's a tough one. I mean, I get paralyzed by, perfection on this, and it's
Yeah.
something that we're going
Yeah.
through.
Whatever comes to your mind.
And, I think we stand for doing what's right. Like,
Awesome.
we stand for adding value, creating value in the world. Like, I don't
Cool.
know. It's,
That's great.
Obviously not polished and a work in
No,
progress.
well, that's why I love asking these, because like these are the questions we're considering all the time. It's like, yeah, what do we stand for? Like, just like like, okay, that's a great, like, it's not an easy answer. It's not a quick answer. Next question. What do you want the Lindner family to be known for? So let's say that my family meets your family and we become friends, and I'm like,
Okay.
and we're sitting around the dinner table, like, that Lindner family, they just, like, what would we say? Like, if you could design, like, man, this is what I want to be known for. This is what I would want other families to say about the Lindner family.
They just care.
Hmm.
They just care. I mean, I think, this is connection, right? This series is connection. I think that most people are void connection in their life. And all those things that I said, those four, and thinking of others more than we think of ourselves. How you make someone feel, like, you can't buy that.
Right.
And have someone that authentically cares, that authentically shows up. My wife, man, that is her. That is her through and through. It's something I've been in awe of since the moment we met. And if that's how our family were known, I'd feel really, really good about that.
Yeah. Like, yeah, what we're known for is that we care. We add value. That's awesome. Last question. We are creating a culture of, like, what would you say, like, when you look at the culture in your home, is there one or two or three words or kind of something that comes to mind of like the kind of culture that you really want to create?
Yeah, I think it's, it's loving, giving, caring.
Cool. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
and these are the types of
maybe
things.
not all that mind blowing, but
no, that's the beautiful thing, is like every family I ask that, everyone has a different question, which is cool, because just like every organization would have their own answer to those questions, right? Like, that's unique and authentic to them. So you guys, like, amazing conversation. Richard has shared some incredible nuggets. Please start a watch party, share this. If you guys want to be aware of upcoming interviews like this, amazing guests like Richard will be going for the next couple of weeks, you can go to our Facebook page, Family Brand, and like that and get updates. Also, if you go to Facebook and type in the search Family Brand Community, you can join our free Facebook group, and we have a gift for you, a course that we created. People keep asking, when's the flagship course coming? It's coming. We're filming behind the scenes as we speak and like building that out and going to launch that. But the purpose of this right now is just add value for families and hopefully share something on these interviews that would have a family be like, you know what? I learned something today about what we could do to plant our family's flag. Like, I learned something today that we could do to be a bit more intentional. And I just love the focus. I've never thought about it that way, Richard, this idea that, like, what if every generation thought of themselves as the first generation, but not like we're alone. Like, no, we're going to take all the good that the previous generation gave us, but like, we get a fresh start. And then if that just kept successively.
Yeah. I mean, you've been handed the baton. So, what do you do with it? And how do you make sure that you're not tripping up in the same leg of the race that the generation before you did?
It's amazing. I love the emphasis on family stories and that tradition. we're gonna have to do that with our kids, like, because I think it's really easy for kids to take for granted, the lifestyle that they have, and what, in certain situations, be like, hey, wasn't always this way, right?
Right. Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I urge everyone to go and kind of almost do like a pain audit of your life. Go back and all the things that brought you to your knees and asked you, like, God, why? And then write down what you learned about that, and then figure out how you can create that in a story that is age appropriate for your kids. And I don't mean age appropriate like language. Hopefully you're not. Hopefully you're using appropriate language in front of your children. I mean in length. Like, if I have any fault with my children, it's I drag things out too long and forget that they're 7 and 12 and need to just be super succinct in it. But if you can document those things that were critical, yesterday or 10 years ago, tell them in a story, especially one that anchors back and validates who you are as a family or why you do the things you do. It's so much easier for them to grasp. But it all starts with, take a walk down memory lane, and it doesn't have to be a painful walk. You acknowledge the pain, but then you acknowledge the things that you learned and the growth that was achieved from that pain, and then figure out how to give that knowledge to your children without having them to experience that pain. that's a good Friday night activity.
Man, that's amazing. And I don't know if you even caught that you did it, Richard. You said one of the biggest realizations that I had. So the way we help companies unpack that is we literally call it the realizations exercise. Now, all of us have had thousands of realizations in our lifetime, but when most of us go back as individuals and look at the trajectory of our lives, we've probably had about 3 to 5 kind of life-altering, course-shaping realizations. And it's those I realized moments that there's another way you can be like, yeah, what were those realizations? And almost all of them were preceded by some type of pain, struggle, or challenge that had you have this realization of like, wow, I got to change something. Things got to be different. Yeah. What an amazing activity to do a pain audit. I love that. Okay, Richard, thanks for coming on, man. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. This is
for
fun.
Those of you joining, and here's to families planting their flag. See you guys.
All right. Bye, guys.